When I tell you I searched for the largest planter that the dollar store had to offer, know that I am not lying. You may be able to get a bigger one somewhere else, but this was the size of my hot cocoa mug, or coffee if you don't want to do as much work. I also picked up this tin pizza tray and made sure to cut off the outside rim portion with tin snips. At first, this is simply so the edges are more pliable. I found that it was increasingly difficult to actually bend this as needed when it had the full lip on it. To fully bend this into the planter as far as I wanted to, I made sure to use gloves as these were now very jaded edges. Jagged? Anyways, I digress. I then took off the Betty Crocker stickers. I would be filling this up soon enough. I chose between a few options of pool noodle, as you may have seen from my last video, but I knew I would need more marshmallow shaped ones later. And I wanted to add more visual interest to the outside of this, so I used a slightly more textured pool noodle for the handle, cut it down to size using a serrated knife, and with my tried and true execution of getting the length of the wire that would fit into the pool noodle with a little bit excess outside, doubling that up and bending it at about the halfway point, adding one end into the drill and getting a good grip on the other end, and then letting the drill do all the work. I twisted the wire to add more stability, placed the wire into the pool noodle, and manipulated it a bit, basically just bent it back and forth to get a little bit more of the bend that I would actually need it for it to be the handle. I then simply hot glued each end and placed it onto the planter, being sure to hold it into place for a few seconds at least. Now with this way of doing it will not be a usable handle. Well, maybe like a few uses, but I don't think it would be worth it, honestly. This planter mug is mostly for display uses anyways, just a little PSA. I also did place a little bit of hot glue around the seam as well and let that cool down slightly and then soften the edges with my fingers. Did burn myself a few times, not gonna lie, but just be aware of that. And if you plan to make this into a coffee mug, this is not a necessary step, but I also started to add some marshmallows, doing a little guessing game on the size and cutting them down at some on an angle and some straight. I then primed the foam pool noodle with Plasti Dip, but any primer used specifically for foam, etc. would work. While that was drying, I made the marshmallows. To use up some clay I had lying around, which is air dry clay, but I might recommend using something lighter like the Model Magic type stuff, as this is a clay that shrinks as it dries, and it's not my favorite, but I have a large abundance of it. I rolled it out and then added school glue on both sides, as it prevents it from cracking as much as the clay normally would, but as well as it makes it stick to objects better, which was helpful as I placed it around each piece of the pool noodle that I previously cut down. I smoothed out all the edges, again with some more of that school glue, and then covered the inner hole. Sounds weird now that I say it out loud. Once I had a handful of them and allowed them the time to dry, I did put some resin on them. A very thin coat, just so that no matter how much paint went on, or no matter what this was going to go on, they would be waterproof and just generally protected. I then painted them with a white acrylic paint. Finally, took off the sticker from the planter and made the straw out of the rest of the same pool noodle I used for the marshmallows. If you have a white or red pool noodle, this step would be a lot easier, but I did not, so instead I wrapped red and white duct tape around it in a spiraling pattern. To further the top portion and give the straw something to actually sink into, I opted for some faux whipping cream, which I just used spray foam to emulate. You may notice to the right I already had one going. It didn't work out how I was wanting it to, so I started a new one, but actually used some of the pieces from the old one to add to this one, using its own body parts to Frankenstein another one together. Anyways, after the foam got a little bit more firm, I added the marshmallows in so they wouldn't sink to the bottom, but still sink into a little bit enough to hold them. Then I peeled it off. Let's see if I can actually take this off. Generally, when I use spray foam in a project like this, I would spray some water down so it wouldn't stick to whatever the surface I was putting it on. So this was new territory for me, and it mostly worked. It got stuck in a couple places, but whatever. Huzzah! To add even more to the whipping cream dollop, I drizzled brown and black fabric paint into it to give it a chocolate syrup look. Then I added red and white beads to act as almost sprinkles. As well as some I had previously made on another project, the second last one I posted actually, but I ended up using it here. Well, I again waited for that to dry. I painted the entire piece with a glossy red. How festive. Maybe not anymore because Christmas is done, but still, red is like a winter color, right? Excluding the inside as that would be a waste of spray paint and time. Finally, to fully make the top portion, I placed the pizza tray in, now with the whipping cream to figure out which way it would be best situated. I figured out how much I would need, liquid-wise, to go into the pizza tray by placing water in there till just before where I wanted the actual liquid to go, and then figured out how much that would be measured out to. Got rid of the water, somewhat properly I suppose. Again, I thought about it. Did I really, think about it, you know? And wipe the pizza tray clean. For the hot chocolate, I knew I would be adding resin, but in case the resin wasn't opaque enough or for whatever other reason, basically just as a backup plan for a short, I painted the metal with acrylic paint. 2 different tones, kind of blended them together. Then mixing up the resin and then add acrylic ink into the mix and mix that up. Pouring that bad boy into the now dried pizza tray. Making sure it's as level as possible by clamping the sides down flat. I think I added 3 clamps to that. And now placing the fully cured whipping cream into the resin bath. Actually later than I thought it was going to be. Once secured, I placed it inside once again to make sure it would still work, and since it did, I then cut off the excess around the edges and did this with just scissors, very sharp scissors, and very, very carefully. As a last-ditch effort to make this safer to use and have out, I did use hot glue around the edges so there was less ability to get caught on it. And then I painted those with a similar brown, and that was that. If you guys enjoyed this video, I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.